The world smelled of ash and despair. In the middle of a crumbling town, buildings shattered by bombs and streets that seemed carved out by sorrow, a young nurse named Evelyn stood among the ruins. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the collar of her uniform. She wasn't trembling because of the cold. It was a fear she couldn't shake, an ache deep in her chest. Today marked her 5th month in this war zone, and each passing day seemed heavier than the last. Evelyn wasn't a soldier, but she was fighting a war of her own. Her battle wasn't fought with weapons, but with bandages, the touch of hope she gave to wounded soldiers, and a voice that tried, against all odds, to comfort those she could save. Yet tonight, her heart was breaking for reasons far more personal. The camp was quiet under the dim glow of the moon. Evelyn had just returned from another exhausting day, tending to the injured. She collapsed onto her cot, the silence around her deafening. But her mind couldn't rest. It drifted to him, Daniel. Daniel had been her childhood love, the boy with the mischievous grin and a heart bigger than the skies they used to stare at during summer nights. When war had broken out, Daniel enlisted straight away. "I'll come back to you," he had said, his hands gently cupping her cheeks, his eyes filled with steady determination. "And we'll have the life we dreamed of, Evelyn. I promise." But promises, Evelyn thought bitterly, didn't mean much during wartime. She hadn't seen Daniel in over a year. His letters were sparse, sometimes arriving months later than expected. The most recent one, a scrap of paper stained with dirt, had said, "If I could carry you with me in my heart, Evelyn, I'd have the strength to walk through fire." After reading and rereading the letter until the ink seemed burned into her soul, Evelyn didn't know whether it made her feel comforted or filled with dread. War consumed lives faster than anyone could comprehend, and though she tried to believe he was still out there, she knew that soldiers returned less often than they didn't. A distant sound snapped Evelyn back to the present. Footsteps, slow, deliberate ones, echoed outside the tent. She sprang up, her heartbeat quickening. Was it good news? Bad? At the front lines, it always seemed like both were equally possible. The flap of her tent opened, and there, illuminated faintly by the moonlight, was a man. His hair was longer than she remembered, his uniform dusted with grime, his figure battered yet standing strong. It was Daniel. Evelyn froze. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Her eyes darted to his face, searching, convinced she was imagining him. But then he smiled, the same mischievous grin she had clung to over the past year, and she choked back a sob. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's me," he replied, his voice low, steady. "I told you. I promised." Evelyn sprang toward him, ignoring the fragile boundaries war often created around human connection. She clung to him, her arms wrapped tightly around his body, as if she feared he might disappear again. I thought you wouldn't make it back," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. "I barely did," Daniel said softly. His voice was laced with exhaustion, but his arms tightened around her. "But I held on for you." That night, Evelyn and Daniel sat outside the camp, watching the flickering stars above them. He talked about the horrors he had seen, friends lost, nights buried under gunfire, moments where he was certain he wouldn't survive. And Evelyn shared her battles from the hospital tents, the cries of the dying, the guilt of never being able to save enough, the weight of hope fading too quickly. "I barely recognize this world anymore," Evelyn said at last, her voice breaking. "It feels like the war has stolen everything, our places, our dreams, our future." Daniel stared at her, then placed his hand gently on hers. "Do you remember what we dreamed of?" he asked softly. Her voice faltered, but she nodded. "Of course I do. The two of them had always dreamed of a quiet countryside home, gardens filled with wildflowers, evenings spent in peace, and mornings that welcomed sunlight through wide-open windows. As children, they had mapped out every detail of their dream life, staking it firmly in the promise of a future far removed from chaos. Looking at her now, the skies reflecting in her tearful eyes, Daniel felt something stir deep inside him. "We still have that future, Evelyn," he whispered. "We just have to hold on to it. No matter how hard it gets, no matter how broken the world feels, we have to believe that love and hope will survive." Evelyn didn't reply immediately. She simply looked up at him, her chest tightening with emotions she couldn't name. His eyes, weary but unwavering, seemed to pass her strength. In fact, Daniel's entire presence seemed to remind her of something she had begun to forget, that amidst rubble and ash, there was still room to dream. In the months that followed, Evelyn and Daniel discovered just how hard surviving the aftermath of war would be. Daniel carried wounds, physical and emotional, that made moving forward an uphill battle. Both were burdened by the losses they had witnessed and the uncertainty that clouded their days. But together, they chose to rebuild. Every step was small, planting flowers in the cracked soil of their garden, sharing meals with weary neighbors, offering kindness where bitterness had threatened to spread. It wasn't easy. Some days, despair gripped them tightly. But every night, Daniel would take Evelyn's hand, and they would gaze at the stars that had guided them back together. One evening, as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, Evelyn turned to Daniel. "Do you think the world has learned anything from this war?" she asked quietly. "From all this suffering?" Daniel's gaze darkened for a moment, but then his expression softened. "I think the world has learned many lessons, but whether it listens to them, that's up to every single one of us." He glanced at her. "If nothing else, I've learned that love doesn't falter. Not even in wartime." She smiled, her heart swelling as she leaned into him. Their lives might never be the same, but they had each other, and that was a foundation strong enough to build on. Thank you for listening to the story of Evelyn and Daniel, a story about love, resilience, and hope in the shadows of war. If this tale touched your heart, let us know your thoughts in the comments. And remember, every tale carries a lesson about life, about humanity, and about what truly matters. For more stories that move you, inspire you, and highlight the beauty within struggle, subscribe to our channel. Together, we'll keep sharing the moments that remind us what it means to truly live. Until next time.